After some poor pitching in that tiny ballpark on Monday night, the Orioles flipped the script on Tuesday. Dean Kremer and the bullpen, well, they were magnificent in the O's win over the Rays. And I'll recap it coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Wednesday, June 18th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' victory over the Tampa Bay Rays on Tuesday night. Gives you the 5 things you need to know from that one, including a great pitching performance all around, a big home run from Colton Cowser, and Ramon Laureano just kind of showing off all of his skills in the victory. Then we'll talk a bit about the roster move the Orioles made on Tuesday, with Grant Wolfram returning briefly to the big leagues and what it means for the Orioles starting pitcher here on Wednesday. And then finally, a couple of injury news and notes, Tyler O'Neill, Tyler Wells, and give my thoughts on the Rafael Devers trade as well. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So as I'm recording right now, Taylor Walls just flied out to center field, and the game has just gone final here on Tuesday night. Final score from the single-A ballpark in Tampa, it's the Orioles 5 and the Tampa Bay Rays 1 in Game 2 of a 4-game set. The Orioles, after losing Game 1 7-1 on Monday night, get this one and have won 4 out of 5 games and get to 31-41 on the season, back to 10 games under 500. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from this Orioles win on Tuesday. And the first thing you need to know is Ramon Laureano just showed off all his tools in this one. It began in the top of the second inning. Laureano at the plate with Jordan Westburg at third base and 1 out after Westburg had doubled, and then O'Hearn ground out got him to third. And Laureano gets behind in the count, but then lashes a ball up the middle off the glove of Rays second baseman Brandon Lowe into center field for an RBI single to put the O's up 1-0. Then to lead off the bottom of the second, Jonathan Aranda, who's been incredible for the Rays so far this year, lashes a single into right center field, thinks about turning it into a double. Ramon Laureano, who might have the best outfield arm in all of baseball, had other ideas. Throwing on the run and throws out Aranda at second. Nice tag on the back end by Gunnar Henderson. 5th outfield assist of the year for Laureano. That leads the team. And he almost had another one later in the game. In the 4th inning, Brandon Lowe had a leadoff double into the right field corner, and Laureano was playing like way over towards the right center field gap. He got the ball off a ricochet off the wall with a bare hand, just spun and fired a laser to second. Lowe thought he was going to cruise into second with a stand-up double. He ended up having to dive in, and Laureano made it somehow even a close play, even though Lowe was still safe at second. That arm is unbelievable, what he can do out there in right field. When he shows it off, it is fun to watch. But it wasn't just the arm, and it wasn't just that RBI single in the first. He did it again with a big swing in the 6th. He came up there with runners on first and second and 2 outs with the O's leading 2-1 in the 6th. And on a 3-2 fastball, he lines it back up the middle for an RBI base hit to make it 3-1. And, you know, he's a guy, along with a lot of Orioles, who have struggled with runners in scoring position this year. Came into Tuesday's game 6 for 40 in those spots on the year. That is a 150 batting average. It's actually lower than the Orioles team batting average, which is right around like 210 or 215 at the moment. But 2 big hits for Laureano, and it's not something that teams have been able to do against Zach Littell. You combine Laureano, 150 with runners in scoring position, and the Rays starter Littell, opponents have hit just 192 against him this year with runners in scoring position coming into Tuesday. But Laureano got him, and specifically that big hit he had in the 6th, that came with a runner in scoring position and 2 outs. Opposing hitters coming into Tuesday were just 3 for 23 against Zach Littell this season with 2 outs and runners in scoring position. That is a 130 batting average, and Laureano just the 4th hitter to beat him in that spot to get a huge insurance run. And for Laureano, like you're looking at his season, right? He's got an 839 OPS, got a 133 WRC plus, and he's sitting here as the bench outfielder that's playing a lot, while Tyler O'Neill is still on the injured list. We'll have an update on him later in this episode. I'm just kind of pretending he's Tyler O'Neill. Like if we were getting this kind of production from a healthy Tyler O'Neill right now, we'd be saying, hey, so far so good on that contract he signed this offseason. Instead, he's out. It's kind of the one-year bench guy you got with Laureano who's producing. But you know what? As long as somebody's in there in right field producing, I'll take it. And right now, it is certainly Ramon Laureano. Second thing you need to know from Tuesday's win is that Colton Cowser went deep in this one to break the tie in the fifth inning and break his mini slump. Cowser, who missed basically 2 months after breaking his thumb in the fourth game of the season in Toronto, came off the injured list about a week and a half ago in Seattle and was red hot early, right? Homered early in his time off the IL, was swinging the bat well, but recently had been in a little 1-for-17 slump. The strikeouts were starting to pile up again for Cowser, but hopefully he broke out of that slump in the fifth inning. A solo home run off Zach Littell gave the Orioles a 2-1 lead at the time, hit it 109 off the bat, 409 feet, just a line drive off the facade in right center field. And for Cowser getting that home run, it was quite surprising the pitch he got because Littell got ahead 0-2 in that count. And Colton Cowser, we know what his struggle was. We know what it was all of last year, even though he had a great season and finished second and frankly should have won the AL Rookie of the Year award. We know his kryptonite. It's an off-speed pitch, a changeup or a splitter from a right-handed pitcher. Last year, Cowser hit 171 with a 43% swing and miss rate against those pitches. He's hit a little higher average this year in a small sample size, but the struggles have continued. He's got a 55% swing and miss rate against either changeups or splitters, what Baseball Savant would call off-speed pitches, coming into Tuesday's game. And Zach Littell had already struck him out on a splitter earlier in the game. He had him 0-2 in that at-bat. I mean, everybody in the universe, including Cowser, is thinking Zach Littell's throwing a splitter here. And it didn't matter that everybody knew, because if he threw a good one, like he does, Littell has a great splitter. He throws a lot of good ones. That's allowed him to have the great season he's been having this year, even though the O's got him for 3 runs. He's got a 3.88 ERA on the year, and that splitter is a big reason why he's been successful. I can't understand why he didn't throw it. He instead throws Cowser a right-on-left slider that kind of hangs in the inside middle part of the zone, and Cowser explodes on it for the solo home run to put the Orioles up 2-1. I mean, that's one of the bigger pitching calling mistakes, whether it was Littell, whether it was the Rays catcher, Matt Dice, whether it was a combination of the two, whatever it was. I mean, just a big failure on pitch selection right there, and Cowser takes advantage for what ended up being the game-winning swing in this one. Third thing you need to know from Tuesday in Tampa is that the Orioles also rallied off another left-handed pitcher in the seventh inning of this. When I mentioned Zach Littell, 6 innings of 3-run ball as the Rays starter, and they go to the hard-throwing rookie lefty Mason Montgomery out of the bullpen in the seventh, with the Orioles leading 3-1. Montgomery's got nasty stuff. He can run the fastball up above 100 miles an hour, and he allowed a Dylan Carlson 1-out single, but, he had got a couple of strikeouts and was looking to get a clean inning. I mean, side note, Dylan Carlson, how about that? 3 hits and a stolen base in this game. He continues to swing a red-hot bat, even if his playing time is going to go down a little bit as the Orioles' outfield is finally healthy with Mullins and Laureano and Cowser back. But then the O's get a single from Adley, and then a single from Gunnar. An RBI single and a liner back up the middle puts the Orioles up 4-1. And for Gunnar Henderson, it is another hit against a lefty with a runner in scoring position. We talked about how much Gunnar struggled early in the year against lefties, especially in those big spots. He's now got 5 of those in his last 5 or 6 games. And Gunnar Henderson is now 8 for his last 14 against left-handed pitchers. This is the Gunnar who we saw dominate lefties on his way to an MVP caliber season last year. And then the struggles he's had against lefties early this year, as many hasn't been at that MVP level, he's starting to pick it up over the past couple of weeks. He does it again. I believe he now has a hit versus a lefty in each of his last either 6 or 7 games at this point. This is the Gunnar we know. This is the bat that is going to scare pitchers of both hands, and that was awesome to see. And then Jordan Westberg also added an infield single to load the bases. I mean, Westberg had a 3-hit game. Arias grounded out with the bases loaded as a pinch hitter, so it stayed 4-1. So the O's did only get the 1 run and left him loaded in the 7th, but still good to see after the Orioles jumped on 2 left-handed starters against the Angels. Tyler Anderson, Yusei Kikuchi, Saturday and Sunday on their way to the sweep of the Halos. Good to see them. I mean, this was the next lefty they faced, right? The Rays had a righty out there for all 9 innings on Monday and then the first 6 innings on Tuesday. So the next lefty they face, they have more success against. Just a really good sign for the O's. Fourth thing you need to know from the win for the Orioles against the Rays is that Dean Kremer was pretty solid in a shorter start on Tuesday night. And he was, he worked as the follower in his last start. Well, not his last start, his last outing on Thursday after Keegan Akin threw a scoreless inning as the opener. And the O's offense did nothing against Tarek Skubal. So kind of buried in that one was Dean Kremer was pretty solid. 7 innings of 4-run ball. All 4 of those runs came in 1 inning. Otherwise, it was 6 really strong against the best team in the American League in the Detroit Tigers. And he followed it up with a good start here on Tuesday. He gives the Orioles 5 just really, really solid innings of 1-run ball, 4 hits, 4 Ks, 2 walks, no homers, and 6 hard hit balls by the Rays hitters against him on 81 pitches. It wasn't perfect, Dean Kremer, but I liked what I saw in a very hitter-friendly ballpark against a red-hot Rays offense. He looked really good out there in the heat on Tuesday night. He once again went heavy on the splitter. It was his number 1 most used pitch. He threw it 30% of the time, basically used it the same percentage to both right-handed and left-handed hitters, which was interesting to see because usually that pitch, a much better weapon for righties against left-handed hitters. And then the curveball, a pitch that was really big when he first came to the majors back in 2020, but every year he's kind of pulled back from the curveball a little bit. We saw a lot of curveballs. That was his number 2 pitch. He threw that even more than the fastball, and both the splitter and the curveball got some really big, really key swings and misses in key moments in the 5 innings Kremer threw in this game. And the only run he allowed was a Junior Caminero RBI single that tied the game at 1 in the bottom of the 4th inning, but it was like a little nub shot right off the end of the bat. It had a 67 mile per hour exit velocity that somehow just floated into shallow right field for a base hit. And it was on a good splitter that Kremer deserved better on that pitch. And, the velo was down a little bit. He did walk 2 batters in 5 innings, but I thought his command was really, really good, especially of that splitter that he threw it a lot. And I said this in the 7-inning outing on Thursday, even though he gave up the 4 runs. I talked about how I was impressed by Kremer, how he noticed that, hey, my splitter is my best pitch overall. I really have a feel for it today. I'm just going to keep going to it because these Tigers hitters can't hit it. And it was the same kind of deal against the Rays offense on Tuesday. It's his best pitch. He had a good feel and he kept going to it. And I talked about it on Thursday. I think that's a good sign moving forward. And Kremer showed it again in a better outing here on Tuesday. That is a really, really good sign for Kremer because the O's are going to need him to at least be solidly serviceable for the rest of the season after he has had his struggles so far this year. And you could argue, right, that Tony Mansolino maybe pulled him too early. Kremer was only at 81 pitches through 5 innings, but 2, 3, 4 in the Rays lineup was coming up for the 3rd time through in the 6th inning. Opponents have a 971 OPS against Dean Kremer the 3rd time through the order this year, and the O's bullpen has been incredible. So I didn't mind pulling Kremer there. I mean, it was certainly aggressive managing from Tony Mansolino, and that's something you'd like to see. It's only June 17th, but the Orioles at 11 games under 500 are kind of playing for their lives a little bit, and each of these games matters. And if this were September, October, that would be absolutely the correct move to pull Kremer there and get a red hot bullpen in. But maybe don't do it as much in June. I kind of like that Mansolino did that, and it certainly helped the Orioles win this game. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 5-1 win in this game in Tampa is that incredible bullpen, well, it was incredible again. Mansolino ended up going to Keegan Akin in the bottom of the 6th, holding a 3-1 lead. And how about Mansolino sticking with Akin to get 5 huge outs, faced 8 batters, got into some trouble, but he left him out there. And 8 batters tied for the 2nd most Akin has faced in any outing this year. The 29 pitches he threw was the 5th most on the season. But hey, an inning and 2/3 scoreless. You love to see it from Keegan Akin. Gregory Soto came in 2 on, 2 out, 4-1 game in the 7th, got a huge strikeout of Josh Lowe to strand 2 base runners and keep the Orioles in the lead. Of course, another scoreless inning from Brian Baker. Why wouldn't it be on only 8 pitches in the 8th? And then the O's did get an extra run in the top of the 9th. You had a Carlson single, a stolen base, and then Jackson Holliday brought him in on an RBI single to make it 5-1. So you could have argued, okay, it's a 4-run lead. It's no longer a save situation. Maybe you don't bring in Felix Bautista because Sir Anthony Dominguez was warming at one point, but Mansolino's still done this a couple times this year where he stays with Felix even in a 4-run game. And Bautista still made it look simple, didn't labor through the inning, through 14 pitches, goes 1-2-3, and the Orioles lock down a 5-1 win. Another 4 scoreless innings from this bullpen that has just been magnificent in the month of June is the reason why the Orioles are 10-5 in this month and are playing a whole lot better baseball right now. But the Orioles also, we got some news and notes, some roster moves coming up over the past couple of days. Going to use the last 2 segments to recap some of the big ones when we start to do that. Coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. And for me, my favorite part of Monarch Money, it's the easy collaboration. You can manage money with your partner and it's smoother than ever. Really helps me and my wife. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. So the Orioles got the 5-1 win over the Rays on Tuesday night. They also made a roster move before the game, recalling left-handed pitcher Grant Wolfram from AAA Norfolk. Now, the Orioles had originally called up Colin Selby before Monday's game, as they had, a bit unexpectedly, they had placed Cade Povich on the 15-day injured list with a little bit of a hip issue. And, Mansolino said it wasn't super serious and it shouldn't be a long absence for Povich. But obviously you need another starter to replace Cade Povich into the rotation. But until you need that starter, the Orioles said, let's get a fresh arm in the bullpen. So they called up Colin Selby and he absolutely did his job, right? Blowout game 7-1. He threw 2 scoreless, pretty nasty innings in the 7th and the 8th on Monday night. And then you get to the point where, the Orioles have TBA listed as their starter for Wednesday. So they're going to call up a starter Wednesday. At the most, Selby will be sent back down before Wednesday's game to get the starter up here. So since he threw 2 innings and 24 pitches on Monday, you say, well, Colin Selby has options. He's not even going to be available out of the bullpen on Tuesday. He's already going to get optioned on Wednesday anyway. We might as well call up a different pitcher just in case we need him on Tuesday. And that pitcher was Grant Wolfram, who was called up with Selby optioned back to AAA Norfolk. Now, you get another fresh arm. Orioles didn't end up using him on Tuesday, but Wolfram, a lefty who came over from the Brewers in a small trade that involved Daz Cameron back in April. He was actually up with the Orioles in late April, made 2 appearances out of the pen, inning and a third, 3 hits, 2 runs, a strikeout, and 2 walks. That first one, April 26th in Detroit, was actually Wolfram's major league debut. He was an 18th round pick by the Rangers in 2018, made it to AAA with them, released from the organization, caught on with the Brewers, then comes over here to the Orioles. The fastball, sinker, 95, 96, got a slider at 86 that gets big swing and miss, and he's got a curveball at 83. And he was pitching really well in AAA. That's kind of why the Orioles rewarded him by calling him up here. In his last 6 appearances for the Norfolk Tides, 10 innings of 1-run ball, 7 hits, 11 Ks, and 2 walks in that stretch. And he last pitched on Friday night, so he's very well rested as well. And in Norfolk, he's had 4 appearances of more than 1 inning so far this year, so he can give you a little bit of length in the bullpen. But of course, he gets called up. He did not pitch in the game on Tuesday. He was probably only going to pitch in a blowout scenario, either with the Orioles winning or losing. That didn't come up. And again, he is, if it hasn't happened already at the point that you're listening to this or watching this, Wolfram is going to be optioned right back down to AAA Norfolk before Wednesday's game. So again, you may not feel like, hey, Connor, why do I have to know about him? He's going right back down to AAA without pitching again. Well, the Orioles clearly like him as left-handed bullpen depth. Of course, since they've DFA'd Cionel Perez, they've only gone with 2 lefties in their bullpen. They were going with 3 for a while. Now it's just Soto and Akin. At some point, I think they're going to want a third lefty in that pen if someone else gets hurt or struggles. And Wolfram is probably going to be that next guy they call on. So I really think there's a good chance he's back at some point this year. And with Colin Selby, who was optioned on Tuesday, he's got nasty stuff. All of you know how big a fan I am of Colin Selby. Good chance that he gets a couple more chances in the big leagues with the Orioles this year. But again, they're going to be optioned because the mysterious starting pitcher is going to come up here on Wednesday. It's going to be Trevor Rogers. We'll talk about that, but it is going to be Trevor Rogers, and we'll talk about that in the other news and notes we're going to get to in the final segment of the show. That is coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Trade Coffee. Let's be real. Coffee isn't just a drink. It's a ritual, a lifeline, and the thing that gets you from half asleep to fully functioning. And if it's that essential, why settle for anything less than amazing? Well, that's where Trade Coffee comes in. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the U.S., delivering fresh, incredible coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Whether you're a cold brew fan or a pour-over purist, they've got a roast that you will love. And the good thing with Trade is, hey, they're going to try to send you the best match for you, but if that first match of that coffee isn't perfect, Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right, and just right for you specifically. And right now, Trade is exclusively offering our customers 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedonmlb for 50% off your 1-month trial. One more time, that is drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. So we got a few more news and notes to get to here before finishing off the show. Let's start with Tyler O'Neill. Talked about him a little bit on this episode already with him on the IL. And basically, Ramon Laureano had a big game in the win on Tuesday, just taking up the O'Neill production. And I'm at the point where I'm just pretending Ramon Laureano is Tyler O'Neill and liking that contract. Of course, O'Neill is here on a 3-year, about just shy of $50 million deal. He does have a player opt out after this season, but with the injuries and the struggles, there's a good chance he is not going to opt out and he's going to remain with the Orioles for the final 2 years of this deal. Now, he is currently on his second IL stint of the season, and now he was on his rehab assignment last week, which is a good sign. You start playing rehab games, it means you're getting very, very close to being activated off the injured list, and we thought the Orioles could be fully healthy on the hitting side for the first time all year. And then his rehab assignment was paused. Now, O'Neill's been on the injured list since May 18th, so for a month now with a left shoulder impingement. He hasn't played in a big league game since May 15th, but on June 7th, the Orioles sent him to AAA to start a rehab assignment, and he played in 3 games. It looked good, went 4 for 10 at the dish, but then has not played in a rehab game in over a week. June 10th was the last time he played in a rehab game, and now the Orioles have officially, they announced over the weekend, paused his rehab assignment. He went back to Baltimore. He received some sort of medical injection in his AC joint and will now be shut down for at least a week. I believe that was announced on Saturday. So until at least this Saturday, he will be shut down, and then they'll kind of reevaluate the shoulder again this weekend and go from there. Now, O'Neill certainly wasn't producing when he was on the field this year with the O's, a 71 WRC plus in his 93 plate appearances, but a lot of that had to do with injury, right? This is his second IL stint, also had the IL stint for the neck injury that he was trying to play through for like multiple weeks and just couldn't hit at all. But I think this makes it either 15 or 16 stints on the injured list in his entire career between his time with the Cardinals, the Red Sox, and now the Orioles. And honestly, again, with him being shut down again, I just would not expect him back for a while. In my brain, I don't expect Tyler O'Neill back until at least after the All-Star break. And that's basically another month from now without him. I mean, in the meantime, you're going to have Cedric Mullins and Colton Cowser in the outfield pretty much every day. And then Ramon Laureano and Dylan Carlson kind of splitting the rest of the ABs because they've both been producing so well. And obviously, Mullins and Cowser are centerpieces of your team, so you want them out there as well. Your outfield's in a good spot. Now, if you get back to the point where you were recently, where Mullins, Cowser, and Laureano were all also on the IL, and you were playing Jorge Mateo out there and a really struggling Heston Kjerstad along with Dylan Carlson every day, you're in a bad spot. But when you have a healthy Mullins, Cowser, Laureano, Carlson, and most of them, at least Laureano and Carlson, are really producing with the bat right now, I would still like that big right-handed power thump in the order because, again, Mountcastle's on the injury list. Mayo's not really producing. So the Orioles don't necessarily have that. That's like the one thing their lineup, even though it's much, much healthier, is missing at the moment. So I'd like Tyler O'Neill to be in there. But with the production they're getting right now, I don't think it's killing them to not have him. Maybe that will change at some point, but I'm not expecting a lot from him. Again, he's going to come off the IL and play again for the Orioles this year. The question just is, when in the world is that going to happen? But at least for now, guys like Laureano and Carlson are doing a great job on these 1 year, seemed like nothing deals at the time, really picking up the slack for this Orioles team. There's another injured Tyler that had better news. That is Tyler Wells, who I believe 1 year ago yesterday underwent his internal brace elbow surgery on his UCL. And he threw another bullpen this weekend, threw one on the Camden Yards mound on Saturday, threw 25 pitches, mostly fastballs and some changeups. He said throwing breaking balls is kind of the next step in his rehab, and he is still a ways away. He's actually a little surprisingly, it seems like, behind Kyle Bradish in his timeline. Bradish had said publicly, I think last month, he was targeting a return in August. But these are good signs of progress for Tyler Wells, and it seems like both guys could be back at some point in August. We'll see, how far along they are in the rehab, if they come back as relievers, kind of short opener starters, or they wait and come back as like full-fledged starters for the Orioles rotation. It's going to depend on how they're feeling. It's going to depend on if the Orioles are in the race. It's also going to depend on the current state of the Orioles rotation when those two guys are ready to come back. But it does feel like in some capacity, both Tyler Wells and Kyle Bradish, as long as there's no setbacks between now and then, will pitch for the Orioles at some point post-trade deadline. It's just, again, kind of like Tyler O'Neill, a question of when rather than if. And then I did just want to give quick thoughts on the Rafael Devers trade, because what in the world? Like the crazy saga of Rafael Devers, the Red Sox bring in Alex Bregman to play third. Devers is upset. They convince him to DH. Then Tristan Casas gets hurt. They say, can you play first base? He basically says no. Then, June Lee had a great story in Yahoo on Monday after Devers was burying the lead, traded with the remaining 8.5 years and $250 million on his contract to the San Francisco Giants from the Boston Red Sox. And in June's story on Monday, he reported that Kristen Campbell, the kind of one of the mega prospect rookies for the Red Sox, who's up in the big leagues and kind of doesn't have a set position right now, when Casas went down and Devers said no to first base, Campbell had volunteered to play first base, and the Red Sox started working him out defensively at first to get him some innings there. And the reporting from June Lee was that Devers took it as a slight and like a sign of disrespect from Christian Campbell that he just offered to move to a different position. I mean, that's kind of insane behavior if that is true. And that makes me see a little bit of the reason why the Red Sox might have just wanted to move on. I mean, he's still your franchise player. He's the best hitter in this lineup. The Red Sox are objectively much worse after making this trade, although they did win the very next game Monday night in Seattle after the trade. But I mean, this just a crazy deal, crazy situation. It seems like, the Red Sox aren't totally out of fault too. They seem like bad communication from everyone involved to Devers with all the plans this offseason and this year with his positional changes and becoming a full-time DH and moving him off third base. But it's just a disaster, and I'm kind of sitting back and enjoying what I'm watching. It's, the Red Sox have been basically hovering around a 500 team all year. This certainly is not going to help, trading away your best hitter and surefire all-star this year. And it helps the O's to get Devers out of the division. He's been great against the Orioles. And I think the Red Sox are still going to try and win this year. I think they're still going to try and get to the postseason in 2025. But trading away Rafael Devers does not help you do that. It certainly hurts that case. Now, the O's don't have to face Devers, at least in Boston. And also, Ryan O'Hearn said it, I think he was on Foul Territory on Tuesday, and thanked Craig Breslow, the Red Sox GM, for making the trade, because Ryan O'Hearn is now the obvious front runner and leader to be the starting designated hitter for the American League in the All-Star game. And he's now the leading vote getter with Devers out of the equation. And statistically, with Devers out of the equation, he's also the leading guy. So definitely a cool there for Ryan O'Hearn as well. But the Orioles will continue on this series against the Rays here on Wednesday night, and it is officially official. Tony Mansolino, I believe, announced it here in his post-game presser after the game on Tuesday. Trevor Rogers will take the hill to make his second start of the season for the Orioles. He is in Tampa at the moment on the taxi squad for the O's, but he'll be activated with Grant Wolfram going back down to AAA on Wednesday. Rogers, of course, made that one-spot start in Boston back in late May, gave the Orioles 6 1/3 scoreless innings at Fenway Park in a W. He's been pretty good, an ERA around 3 in his 3 starts in AAA since then. He'll get the ball once again this year, trying to flip that trade back the other direction for the Orioles. It's a 7:35 start on Masson 2. He'll go up against the right-hander Taj Bradley 24-year-old righty has that big-time rising fastball that he throws, but he's only lasted 4 innings in each of his last 2 starts. So we'll see if the O's can get to him early in this one as well. And then I'll be back on Thursday recapping Game 3 of the series between the O's and the Rays and getting you anything else in Birdland that you may need. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.